When a herring meal comes into our country, we import it in. If it contains, say, 50% ethoxyquin, it doesn't have to be listed on the label of ingredients. So there can be this carcinogenic, supposedly it's a food preservative, but it's toxic. And it can be in the food in fairly high percentages, and it doesn't have to be on the label.
See, that's what I don't want to say that excited me to hear that, but it actually, it was interesting. That's putting it mildly to me, because this is what they're doing across the board.
Yeah, there are a lot of loopholes, and the other thing that happens a lot with dog food is, well, first of all dry dog food and canned food is heated at high temperature. So a lot of the nutrients are destroyed in whatever good ingredients were actually in there to begin with. And so the problem can be that they use minerals that aren't really like meant to be used as minerals,
right.
or they add the nutrients back in disproportionate unbalance, let's
right.
say. And so I actually don't feed dry or canned food to my dogs at all.
Okay.
I focus on dehydrated and freeze-dried and whole foods. So my dogs eat like tons of vegetables. They love them because we've been feeding it to them all their lives.
Okay.
And so if you start early, or you start introducing them with food that they really like, it goes pretty well, actually.
Do they eat greens?
Oh, they love greens.
Really?
They love them.
That's awesome.
When we make that delicious hemp seed pesto recipe that you gave me, oh my gosh, especially Lily, she's all like, please give me a bite of that pesto, girlfriend. So she definitely, and it does her a world of good.
So I'm curious about Lily. I think she's absolutely adorable. Well, both your puppies are just adorable, like we were talking about when we first got here. But has Lily been eating this way her entire life?
She actually, let me think about that. When we first brought her home, we had a big German Shepherd at the time, and I think we were feeding a combination of raw food, and we might have still been like right on the edge of when we stopped feeding dry and canned food, because I do remember at one point feeding her like a tablespoon of this canned food that they both really wanted because it smells delicious. I mean, if I were a dog, I would want to eat that too.
Right.
But it totally disrupted her digestive patterns, because like I watch my dogs like a hawk. So I know when they poop, and they know when they, I just know their habits. But after she had that spoonful of canned food, she didn't poop for like hours and hours after that.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, okay, that's it. That's the last time I'm giving them canned food, no matter how much they want it. Because I've just seen the result with her. She's also immune impaired because she has a birth defect. I don't know if I told you that.
You did, yeah.
And so she is, she almost died like 5 times as a puppy. She kept getting pneumonia, and we didn't know what was wrong with her. And finally, this amazing vet figured out that she had a dermoid cyst, which is what happens is when the puppies are developing, the spine and the skin don't separate, and so she has this hole in her back and this cyst that runs down and wraps around part of her spine.
Oh my gosh.
And so we, other vets have looked at her x-rays and they're like, well, she's walking around and we don't know how exactly, but she's been doing really well. Now she's like 10,
wow,
which is like a miracle. And it's mostly, her health is totally due to eating whole foods, lots of vegetables, and I also do supplement with vitamin C and nutritive and medicinal herbs for her.
Okay. And so you've seen an improvement in her health
Oh,
altogether.
yeah. You can like see it. If she's feeling a little bit down or low energy, if she's had too long of a day or something, she's pretty sensitive. I give her some raw garlic
Mhm.
with her food, and then she's like, oh yeah.
I'm really glad you mentioned that because my one son, my younger son Reese.
She only has one son.
No. Nobody heard you say that. I had you turned down.
She only has one son.
That Sarah can see and radio.
You said it. You just said my son. My
I
one
said
son.
one of my sons.
No, you didn't say
My
no.
one son.
My one son.
My one son. You're right. I did say that. Thank you for calling me on
I'm
that.
so
I have
offended.
4. I have 4 sons.
Do you?
Yes.
I lost count like 7 ago.
Yeah, I actually have a total of 6 kids, and but my youngest son. I'm really glad you mentioned the garlic thing. I don't know if he's listening this evening. He's probably not because he
No
works.
way.
Well, he works for a production company. He's actually filming with Sir Ben Kingsley right now. So there's a new TV show.
Shh, we can't talk about it.
I didn't mention the name of the show. I just named an actor.
You said the king. You mentioned the king's
I
name.
mentioned Gandhi.
Gandhi.
We're talking about Gandhi, man.
Sorry, let's go back to garlic. Sorry.
Yeah, Gandhi, garlic, it's all we can do in the tea, right? Anyway, but he was, one of his dogs was she has some immune issues. She really does have some immune issues. And so I suggested that he give her garlic, and he was very afraid to give garlic to a dog. So, it's relieving to hear, because you're an herbalist, this is your specialty. And so hearing that this is what.
Right, and I researched it before I started using it because of all the hype about it. Okay, so if you fed your dog garlic every single day in huge quantities, it could cause problems. And I believe what end result of overdosing on garlic would be like an anemia, which would go away when you stop feeding the garlic.
Okay.
But when you use it intermittently, and especially when dogs have any kind of bacterial infection, it is miraculous. It's amazing. I mean, my dogs really respond well to it, especially Lily. Like, she'll be running up and down the hallway, and after she has a garlic meal. So
That's really sweet.
it is. And so I would say she gets raw garlic 3 or 4 times a week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and I just give her like a small clove. I actually started taking a whole clove myself
Okay.
recently because this cold won't go away. So I'm like, I gotta do something else. So,
Well, it's something I used to recommend to my dental patients when I was working in the dental field. That is a really good way of purifying the blood when you have whether it's periodontal disease or if you actually have a, oh my goodness, I just had a brain fart.
root canal?
Not root canal.
It stinks. Sorry.
No, there's periodontal and there's I might as well just
Gingivitis?
What? That's periodontal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm talking about periapical abscess. Periapical abscess is what occurs, which you would get prior to a root canal, and that's what the abscess that flares up at the end of the root tip. And so when anybody ever came in, that's what I would always suggest. I was not the dentist; I was his right-hand person, and so they always gave me full authority to make nutritional stuff like that, and garlic was one of them that I recommended. So it is a really good blood purifier, and I used to give it to Honey. We used to have a Shar-Pei, and because of her skin, she's always getting cut, and she'd get these infections. So we just slip her some garlic, and she did really, really well.
Slipped her the garlic.
Slipped her the garlic.
So I have a question for you, Sarah. So we're talking about food, and I've been zoned out in the sense of I've been filming us, so I've been paying more attention to that, making sure that we're doing good. So obviously you're not a big fan of dog food I can get at the local,
Correct.
the big corporate store, which I do unfortunately feed my dog that. But at the same time, I will take her to the local restaurant across the street, and they have a dog menu.
I've seen that.
And it's kind of nice. I literally have eaten out of her bowl because they feed her rice and corn, like real human food.
Right.
And I've heard people say don't feed your dog
Human food.
What's your opinion on that? Because I disagree. I think that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I would agree with you there on that. Yeah.
'Cause
I mean, human food. Now, I will say that a dog's digestive system is short and acidic. And so their digestive system is designed to digest food that's like super bioavailable. And so hard, crunchy nuggets that you get in a bag of dog food are not really all that bioavailable. Like if you tried to digest those, you probably wouldn't feel so great.
Right.
And so human food, if it is species appropriate, which is basically meat and greens and vegetables,
Right.
which is what, like prey,
Right, absolutely.
that's what we're talking about. And that is great food.
Yeah,
to
not-
feed
Yeah,
your
don't give
dog.
them chocolate cake, but
Or
Correct.
Cheetos.
right. But I can definitely give them some rice and some corn and some chicken.
Well, grains, some dogs do okay with grains.
Okay.
And some dogs probably kind of need them in a way. I mean, it depends on the dog. But usually, I actually stay away from grains. So the only grains that I give my dogs are oats once in a while. But of course, we don't eat a lot of grains, my husband and I. So we don't have them around the house that much.
Okay.
But they, I think if they get a balanced diet and they're getting, plenty of protein, greens, vegetables, then they're going to be okay. And of course, every dog is different. Some dogs aren't that crazy about vegetables.
Right.
But you do, it's kind of an acquired thing. So you kind of have to work toward that a little bit. And
Especially if they've been eating
Okay. Hold on.
commercial food.
right.
I have a new question.
Okay.
Actually, this is for both. This is for you, Sarah. But I want to let you know this, Mom. This is kind of cool because you feed Nimi a lot. Nimi is short for Nymeria. For those of you that are listening, that's my dog. For those of you that are watching,
And for anybody who sees me walking her in the morning, she's the one that's dragging me down the
she's
street.
down. She's under the table. She's co-starring, but she's too busy chewing her bone. So just like the past few days, I've given her some food, dog food with dry dog food with a farm fresh egg from a farm that I was on, and I gave her the egg raw, and then I also just for the heck of it because she'll eat anything, I gave her the shell.
Oh.
I crunched up
yeah.
the shell and put it in there, and it was the first thing she ate. She loved it.
Oh, yeah. That's actually a good thing.
Right, that didn't seem bad.
I mean, what would a dog in the wild eat? That's the
Right.
question you gotta ask.
Right.
They're not going to
Thank
have
you.
to break the egg for them if they're going to eat it. If they're going to steal an egg, no one's going to be cracking that egg for them.
Correct.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
it's like, it's got minerals and, it is calcium, but it's got other stuff in it too. And that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. Now,
So let's start doing that every time we
So-
can. Give her the shell too. And Theo.
Makes it be better for me.
Theo's her older brother.
so what I would suggest is go with the egg, but skip the dry food. And instead,
okay.
substitute like steamed sweet potatoes or even like grated raw carrots or things like that. You could try those things and, just try them a little bit at a time.
Right.
And then I used to feed eggs raw all the time. And then Dr. Belfield, who's one of my personal heroes, recommends that you cook the whites and feed the yolks raw, which is kind of a pain. But you
That's
can
a
just
little
you
ridiculous.
can just cook them over easy or soft boil them. It's
Okay,
a really
yeah.
easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And then just give the whole egg to the dog, and they'll just eat the shell and the egg. And so
Right, okay.
there's different ways to go with that. And I know probably what I'm saying can be construed as really extreme, but believe me, it took me years to stop feeding dry food. And I was working at Only Natural Pet in their call center in 2008 or 9 during that huge food recall where
Oh, wow.
whole entire kennels of dogs were dying from
Whoa.
the hideous stuff that was in the dog food.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I do think that kind of coaxing him. I was actually talking with one of my Amish people today, and she's trying to get her son to do some things, and he's not doing some of the things I'm suggesting, so we had to hide it in his food. Because you gotta, it's like, you just gotta wean people onto something and make the change, because anything drastic won't go over as well. But that, you had mentioned that, you have to forgive me, the chemical that you mentioned earlier about, that's being...
Oh, ethoxyquin?
Ethoxyquin, okay, is being placed. There's another chemical that's actually going in, and I will say that it's by the Big M, who just got bought out by the big, or who just merged with...
The monstrosity.
The monstrosity just merged with, I don't know if you know this, but
Bayer.
Bayer and Monsanto merged.
I was like, oh yeah, there's a match made in somewhere.
Well, yeah, we could get off on a whole political tangent on that one, because they had to sell off $66 billion in assets, and they sold it off to the largest German chemical company in the world. So it's like our food supply and our seed supply is being regulated by 3 major chemical companies now. But that said, aspartame, which is the infamous sweetener that we all know about, Monsanto has created a concentrated form of that now called neotame, and it was interesting. I noticed that came out about at least 10 years ago. It was published, and then all of a sudden it never went. No one ever talked about it again. However, it was approved for consumption at all levels, meaning organic foods as well as packaged, just regular packaged foods, and including pet foods. You made me think of that when you were talking about that other chemical, because the neotame is a concentrated form of aspartame, and it's so small, it's so concentrated that it doesn't have to go on the label. And in fact, Des and I were talking about this earlier today. Phenylalanine is a component, it's the amino acid that actually makes up aspartame. And he was asking me questions about that, and I was explaining to him that phenylalanine is, like I said, it's an amino acid. And this is where they come off, we're trying to say that it's a natural derivative, this is where we have to be really careful with things that are labeled as natural when in fact it's fabricated in a lab. And phenylalanine happens to be one of those. And but what it is, it's an amino acid that's a precursor for the production of dopamine, which is significant given the level of, now I didn't even want to talk about addiction anymore, but we're back into it again.
It's all kind of connected.
It is all kind of connected, but if you think about it, I mean, like last week we talked about alpha-philandrine, which is a chemical found in plants that is a known appetite stimulant. This is going into a lot of our food products, as well as now this neotame. And neotame can go into any product, like I said, including pet food. And if it's such a concentrated dose of phenylalanine that starts to stimulate dopamine, what's going to happen? I mean, it's to me it would be a no-brainer as to what is actually happening. This is the reason why the dogs want to eat more food. They've got tyrosine. They have brain. I mean, that's what's in the bees. That's actually what's causing problems in the bees. Is that
yeah. And you know that the vegetables that they put into dog food are definitely not organic. And so, and then if you ever see an ingredient that's undefined meat, like meat meal, meat byproduct, or animal digest, you definitely don't want to feed that food to your dog, because that can literally mean any animal.
I'm going to put a pause on that. We're going to take a break and jump into Policy of Truth by Depeche Mode, and we'll be back to carry on this fabulous conversation. Thank you, Sarah, for helping us out here.
Depeche Mode. I just kept saying it, so it turned me off.
That's awesome. You were doing awesome. Thank you so much. I only put a pause on it because I wanted to make sure we got music in there too.
We don't want to bore them.
I don't think this is boring at all. I guarantee you people are like...
With 3 people, it makes it even better.
Listen, this is a great conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I can't thank you enough.
Well, it's hard for people to believe it, because it was hard for me to believe it, even though I was there when the recall was going on. And I watched as recalls happened to the brands that were supposed to be the best ones. And then I was feeding Timberwolf Organics,
Okay.
and I was like, those guys are untouchable. This is like the best food. And then they had a recall, and that was it for me. I was like, that's it. I am not feeding any more dry food to my dogs.
So what was prompting the recalls?
Bacteria, like some kind of contamination, but it was always blamed on the co-packer, not on the people who like
The final distributor?
formulated it
Oh,
or
okay.
whatever. It was always the co-packer. They put in an unauthorized ingredient. It's like,
This is what, yeah, this is good. This is good because then what we want to do is we want to talk about what those undefined meats are. And then I want to jump into these co-packers because the same thing can be said for, I mean, all of our products.
oh yeah,
Because if all you're required to put on the label is what you've put into the product. So if you're buying bases from somebody else,
you don't know what's in there. You do not.
Mhm.
And a lot of the dog food, like parts of it will be cooked here and then brought in and then recooked. And it's just, I mean, when you start learning about like how it actually all works, you're just like, oh my God, I've never
foul
figured-
play for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely foul play. Wow.
This song is about lies.
hmm
It makes me sad. I've always liked this song. Never listened to it though.
There's a lot of songs on lies. There's a lot of people are really, they're talking about deception. That's just it. Okay, that's Otto. That's DJ Otto. I think that's always playing, so I just need to turn this on.
Hey, girlfriend.
Oh really?
That's
Okay,
your
cool.
rope. You're not supposed to chew on that.
Oh, how'd she get a release? Oh, I put her on the floor.
She just picked it up and walked away.
Did she ruin it like she does all of them? No.
She just grabbed it just now.
Get your bone, silly girl. Get your bone.
Mom, get in the picture. Hey! It's all three of us.
Whoa, girlfriend. Hey, what you doing there? Now you're tangled up down there.
Oh, she's getting on. What are you doing, Mimi?
The empty chair.
Step over. Come on, this way. Step over. Okay, good girl.
No. What is with that?
Dogs do that to me sometimes. I don't know why.
Her thing is like Mimi,
Whoa.
They're just hanging around.
alpha. She just wants to be the alpha.
But you
That's why I say she drags me around. And we're trying to,
Yeah.
because she's okay with Theo. She's pretty much respectful of him, but when it comes, and him, I mean, with men, she's good. 'Cause she loves Al. She absolutely loves Al.
Oh.
But women, she's a little bit more like, I'm gonna see if I can do this.
Huh. What's up with that, girlfriend?
She's gotta be the baddest bitch on the block.
Bitch. Shit.
No, you can't have the rope. You cannot have the rope. I know you want the rope, but you can't have the rope.
Bitch isn't on the list.
So how late is this rehearsal going? Do you know?
I have no idea.
They didn't say.
No.
Wish I knew. Nobody's given me any times.
Don't worry, I imagine they'll be there when we get there.
Hmm?
They'll be there when we get there.
I know. Okay, so we are back, and we left it. I left it on that cliffhanger. The undefined meat.
Right.
What is that?
Okay, it's going to be hard to believe, but I read this in one of the first holistic vet books that I read ever, which was The Nature of Animal Healing by Dr. Goldstein.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, I swear to God, he talks about rendering plants where euthanized dogs and cats are taken and rendered into dog food.
Oh my goodness.
And so that includes the chemicals that they were euthanized with.
Right.
I mean, it's shocking to hear that, but it was, I mean, I read about it in that book, and it was confirmed for me several times since then. I mean, I actually hope it's not true, but I think it really is true.
Well, given the level of anxiety that we're seeing in animals, you know,
It's crazy.
I wouldn't put it past it. I mean, today, DJL and DJ Creation Vibration did they read a short story called The Egg, and the point of that is that we're all one. You know, when you're kind to others, you're being kind to yourself. When you're picking on others, you're picking on yourself. And where I can take that is when you have animals who are consuming food that from animals that have, well, been euthanized, who have had horrific deaths.
Right.
The anxiety that went into that, because cells have memory. I mean, our body, I mean, we all, if you don't want to believe that, then you don't understand trauma, because this is the reason why, especially PTSD and things like that, because you have, there's just cell memory, even though there's not necessarily a recollection right off the top of your head, there's still that part. Because I know myself, I've gone through some pretty tragic things myself, and even though I'm not reliving the experience, there's things that may come up that I can feel myself start to tremble, and if you know, so there's definitely cell memory, and it makes me, it's hard to believe that that's actually, I mean, I'm struggling at this point to wrap my head around that.
I know, it's shocking, it is, and so I hope it's not true, but I do know this for sure, that all dry and canned food processed at high heat, shoved through an extruder, damages any good ingredients that were in there to begin with. And so it's hard to digest. And even though dogs exist on it, and cats too, I think that it's so much more respectful and appropriate to feed them food that they were like designed to digest and eat.
Absolutely.
And the other part of that whole thing is, I worked in the call center for like 6 years, so I talked to thousands of people over the time that I worked there. And the people who called in weren't people who were just placing orders. They were calling in because their dogs and cats, like, there was something wrong, and they had tried everything, but nothing was working. Like, they switched dry foods, they tried prescription foods, they tried everything. But what we found is that when they switched to like a dehydrated or freeze-dried or home-prepared food, the problems resolved.
Wow.
It was amazing. It was like miraculous. And so I have many, many stories like that. Like a woman who called me they had tried everything. This dog was now 5 years old. Now she was vomiting blood. And she was in really bad shape. And I'm like, okay, you need to stop the dry food immediately. And she actually went straight to a raw diet. She started feeding raw stew meat with vegetables, with a dehydrated vegetable food, and everything changed. And she called me back and she's like, you have changed our lives completely. And even some of the other stuff that they weren't even that concerned about, like the dog had eyes that were running and dark all the time, that went away too. And this dog had a new lease on life just because they switched to a whole food diet. So,
well, that says a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what they're doing to the food, when you switch from processed food, regardless of what's going into it, and then a whole food, and you see that dramatic of a change, then you know something's up.
oh yeah.
Something's fishy.
And it happens really quickly with dogs and cats, especially dogs. Cats can be a little bit more tricky.
Right.
But once you switch them to species appropriate food, and you can do it like overnight, you don't have to wait, because it's usually the processed food that's causing the problem.
Right.
But once you switch it, you'll see results quickly. And I'm talking about like body odor, bad breath, itching, ear infections, all of that stuff is
Wow.
food related.
I think you were telling me once that your dad and Allison you were telling me something about the llamas.
Oh yeah. So when you say species appropriate food, my dad and my stepmom have llamas, and 2 of them are rescue. I guess they're all technically rescue, but there was 2 of them that they've had for over 10 years. And the way that they got them through the llama rescue is they were in a really bad car accident on the way to be dog food. They were on the way to the factory to be, and they got in a car accident which almost killed them, which then ended up saving them because now they've lived 10 years
I love that story.
on a happy
my God,
ranch.
I'm crying a little bit.
So how often is it, do you think, our dogs are eating llamas
Oh.
and other, I mean, I get cows and maybe even horses and goats, but
Oh, and the stuff that
what
sank
other-
to the bottom of the ocean in
Yeah.
the Gulf of Mexico is what I've actually read that they're, that they're using.
Harvesting.
Yeah. I mean,
what
that
sunk to the bottom of the ocean?
a lot of sea animals and fish and
Oh,
all kinds of stuff from the oil leaks and the
okay.
and the stuff that they're spraying on the ocean to make the oil leaks disappear. It's poisoning the Gulf of Mexico. And so their animals like dying, and
And then they're just feeding our dogs those animals? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that
what they're-
some of those dead animals are ending up in pet food.
Oh
And we
my
do have, especially they're
goodness.
probably more like cat food because it's
Of
seafood,
fish
right?
related, yeah, and that's why, oh my God, it's so sad, it's really
I
sad.
wish we had examples of packages in here. Not that we would want to name names, but we just could read ingredients, because we and I were talking during the music break about things that, and we even started off the show talking about secret ingredients or things that are hidden. And so it's not just the chemicals that you and I have referred to, but it's also the things that people are getting from other sources. Okay, so that doesn't, it's not just, it's pet food, it's human food,
Oh yeah,
personal care products. If you are the distributor, you don't necessarily, all you're responsible for adding to the label is what you've put into that product.
correct.
Anything else, if it's come from other sources, you can get, you get undefined meat.
Right.
Undefined meat.
And I guess there was an issue with, in China, they were adding some form of plastic to food to like boost the protein levels or something. That caused a lot of problems until, they found out what was going on. But so I would never feed any food or treats that have a label that says made in China, because
Wow.
it's scary. It's really scary. And during that food recall, it was always blamed on the co-packer, not on the formulator of the pet food. So, who's really to blame? I don't know.
Yeah, you've got a chain of,
A chain of events that
yeah.
are not good.
Well, I even heard that shredded cheese. I was cautious about shredded cheese because there's supposedly wood.
Oh,
That's one of the things that was hidden in there, was to kind of keep it from sticking, is they put wood in there. But there was something else that you said earlier. You were talking about processing the food and putting it through extruders and high heat and so forth. That's exactly what they did with milk. Louis Pasteur, who came up with pasteurization, later retracted he didn't believe in it, because basically the pasteurization of milk kills the milk. I strongly encourage people to take raw milk diets, or include raw milk. I don't know that we can actually find raw milk around here. I know we can get raw cheese, but because it kills the enzyme, minerals unavailable. Calcium and magnesium is no longer usable at that point. And so in Europe they actually use, I shouldn't use the word use, but they include raw dairy as part of a protocol for treatment of obesity and cancer and diabetes and such, because of the health benefits to a raw whole food.
mm-hmm.
And it makes a lot of sense with what you're saying with the animals.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And plus their digestive system, it's designed for bioavailable food, and in the wild, what would a canine eat?
Right.
They'd eat the meat, they'd eat the stomach contents, and that's all enzyme-rich food, all the organ meats, and so.
Well, the other thing that's scary to me is the amount of things that they're adding to foods these days, besides, besides the chemicals we've already talked about, but there's the emulsifiers.
Oh, I know.
The nanotechnology that they're incorporating into these products to enhance uptake. We were talking about this last week, that they've actually been able to, they're figuring out how to, what is the word I want to look for? Influence the blood-brain barrier.
Oh my God.
They're actually figuring out how to make it more permeable, to introduce medications, and then reverse that effect. And I'm just concerned about that. They're doing it in our clothes. In Europe, they actually have outlawed the nanotechnology in clothing. They were putting nanotechnology in their clothes to protect it from body odor. And of course, every supplement that I think that there is, plus all your skincare products, all have these types of products. Ingredients. And I'm certain that they're in the animal food too.
Oh yeah.
Because they're going to want to enhance nutrient uptake.
Well, oh yeah, and they're adding nutrients back in because the heating process destroys most of the viable. There are no enzymes in dried or canned food.
Right.
That's all gone. And then, and then the oils that are in the food are rendered at such high temperatures. That's where fatty tumors come from.
Oh, wow.
And so if you have a dog or cat that has fatty tumors, you got to get them off of whatever they're eating. And think about like the oils that are in there that go through such high temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's crazy.
It's a lot of this. We're seeing a lot of the same effects even in our human food. I mean, that's what's going on with all of our processed foods, and it's really a call to action. And again, I have to say this because I always talk a lot about stuff like this, and then I have people come to me and they'll say, or they'll contact me and they'll be like, "Well, I'm not 100%. I can't do this 100% of the time, and I get that." I also get the culture. So now that I'm saying that, I get the culture that we live in. It's fast-paced. We do have financial constraints, which brings me to the point where how is feeding an animal, like you're talking about, whole foods, how does that compare cost-wise?
Cost-wise?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there are some dehydrated foods that are actually really affordable, and because they're dehydrated, you can order them and have them shipped at a relatively small cost, or there's a couple companies that ship for free if you order enough food. And so, but what happens is, like an 8-pound bag of dehydrated food makes like 30 pounds of rehydrated food, and then you can enhance that by adding your own. You can do different things, or you could. I've done this myself, and I know I'm a little bit crazy, but, you can just chop up vegetables and dehydrate them in advance and just keep them in jars. And then you rehydrate the vegetables and then add an egg, and you've got yourself a little yum meal for your dog, at least. Cats don't want to eat vegetables too much because, they're obligate carnivores. But I feed my cat freeze-dried meat that I rehydrate.
Okay.
And
I would imagine it wouldn't be too much. I can't imagine, because I've seen the prices of some of these dried dog food bags. These like high-end dog food.
Oh, they're really expensive. I know, it blows my mind. I'm like, holy cow! I can't believe anybody would pay that much for dry dog food.
Yeah.
But it's expensive.
Yeah, and the thing that we're seeing, like you're talking about the fatty tumors and then all of this dis-ease. And the way I see it, dis-ease is just merely a lack of ease in the system, and the lack of ease is because the body is constantly being challenged, and so there's a lack of ease, and so we're going to see changes that are going to occur that are going to actually lead to disease and disorder. But if we can begin to integrate something like that, I think it just takes the mindset of understanding that it really doesn't. It's not going to be that much more expensive. Truthfully, I feel like if they're eating wholesome foods, that their appetite, I mean, they're gonna be satisfied faster.
Right, they do eat less, like volume-wise,
Okay.
of the rehydrated foods.
Because they're pretty concentrated, you know, it's, and then, you know, well, our dogs eat so many vegetables, so we get off kind of easy because half their meals are almost always chopped vegetables or greens or something. So, I think, you know, people just can experiment with different
Right.
whole foods and even like legumes. Like our German Shepherd, he developed a bunch of allergies because we were unwise. This was like years and years ago. And so we would make this in the crock pot. So we'd cook up lentils, and then toward the end we'd put in frozen fresh fish and fresh vegetables right at the end. And he loved that.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
it was like, and he, you know, he was a big dog. So, you know, when you're feeding a big dog, you do have to kind of put your head
Yeah.
into plan ahead
Yeah.
for those meals, but you can definitely come up with stuff.
Well, I've seen your dogs and they look incredibly healthy and they're very happy. That's for sure. Definitely happy. So I'm going to, what time?
Like 5 minutes.
We've got a few minutes, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and break to Would I Lie to You by the Eurythmics. No, this is great.
Take it.
Take it. Why? Why am I taking it? Hi, guys.
Because it's you.
I just wiped my nose in front of everybody.
I do that all the time.
So I don't know if there's, I mean, yeah, I can't thank you enough for what you've just,
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks. I'm so about getting the word out.
Yeah.
because People don't know. I mean, they just don't know.
was there anything else that I didn't, I mean, I was just letting you talk. I mean, is there anything else that you want to share? A few minutes or,
That kind of covers it. I mean,
Okay.
I do have a website, so people could go, like, I have articles about species appropriate food on there if people
Okay.
want to look at it, but it's either way. If,
well,
you know,
why don't you tell them here? Yeah, tell them here. There's somebody on there.
Oh.
Your website. This is
Okay.
Facebook Live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's summersunherbals with an S.com. summersunherbals.com. And then if you go to the blog section, there's a bunch of articles about species appropriate food, and I also talk about food elimination and all kinds of different gardening. I have a big obsession with gardening, or I did before I came here, and so hopefully I will at some point have a big garden here.
And if
too.
can people consult with you? Do you do consults?
Sure. Yeah, I can consult. I'm way more eager to talk to people about their dogs and cats, because I think people don't always want to change what they eat, and it's
Yeah.
hard. It is hard.
You're correct. Yeah.
So-
I'm going to put this on YouTube too. So if you want to tell people, can they contact you through your website for
Yes.
consults about their animals?
Yeah, sure can.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. What are you doing?
I was being mature this show.
You did great. You did great. So we're going to sign off because we're about done here. But I really want to thank everybody for watching. So Sarah is available for consults for your pets. I'm available for consults for you humans. And
I'm a consult for you stoners.
oh, there you go. He's the cannabis.
cannabis guy.
He's who you hit up about the cannabis. He knows everything about it.
Sounds like I'm a dealer. I'm not a dealer.
He's not a dealer, no. Just got questions. He's got you covered. So anyway, thanks you guys. Love you, and I will see you soon.